Hi there, I'm Ashleigh and I was diagnosed with primary progressive MS in 2022. In this mini-series we're putting the spotlight on progressive MS because we don't always feel that represented when people talk about MS. Until I took part in this podcast, I'd never even met another person living with primary progressive MS, and there's thousands of us. So join me as I delve further into my own and others' experiences of life on the progressive side. Today, I'll be chatting to Helen Glukowski, a neuro physiotherapist here in Manchester, who I've been lucky enough to work with. When I was first diagnosed with primary progressive MS, I felt a bit hopeless, a bit resigned to my fate as a very disabled person. But then as soon as I met Helen, she made me feel that all is not lost, that I could fight back and retain some functionality. So I'm so chuffed that Helen is joining me here in the studio today and to be able to talk to her more about how much she helped. And if you're wondering about how Physio could help you, I hope that our chat will give you some things to think about and maybe follow up. Now, I should say at this point that Manchester has an excellent physio service, in my experience at least, and neither myself nor Helen can speak about services in other areas. Access to physio services might be different where you live. At the end of this episode, I'll make sure to share some handy tips on how you can find out more. All right, so thank you, Helen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Lovely to see you again.
I know it's been too long, actually.
Yeah.
Been a while.
It has, but still, it's nice to occasionally get in touch and say, hey, Helen, I've got this really interesting idea.
Yeah, when I took your phone call, I was like, oh, she wants, she's calling to get some more physio. I was not expecting to be invited to do a podcast at all. So, yeah, very happy to be here.
Good. Glad to have you. So let's start right at the beginning for you then. What prompted you to go into your field?
So from a physio perspective, I was quite an active child, did a lot of sport, and I got injured when I was a young teen. So I had to have some physio. I'd torn a muscle in my leg. And I thought, this is actually quite cool. They made this better. They hooked me up to some electrical thing and made my leg better. But I was like, no, this could work for me. I quite like people, quite like to talk, as you well know. So kind of then my going through GCSEs and etc. So my focus came on science. And then I went to uni and did my degree course, which is a 3-year degree. And then started work in Manchester as a kind of junior physio. But what prompted me to go into neuro rehab, more specifically, having always thought I'd go into sports therapy and kind of be that physio that runs onto the pitch in the middle of a football game or something, was that I worked with some absolutely amazing physios, OTs, speech therapists on a neuro rehab unit as a junior physio. And they were incredibly inspiring to me. And the changes they were making to their patients' lives was phenomenal. And the relationships they had with their patients, because it's a little bit more long-term. Neuro rehab is not a quick process. Yeah. It's much more of a long process. It was just amazing. And I think to experience somebody's kind of achievements, their achievements become your achievements. And that's quite satisfying as a person. So, yeah, here I am, still doing it many years later.
Fantastic. Well, clearly you've found something in it that you enjoy. So that's great to see. So I guess on that subject, can you tell us a little about what your job involves, like day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. So now I work in a community neuro rehab team. So we kind of do two things, really. We support people who are coming out of hospital, maybe post-surgery or post-admission, having been poorly or been in for diagnosis potentially. Mm-hmm. So we get a lot of referrals in, so they're either from the hospital base or we get a lot of referrals in from the community, so people already living at home with their neurological condition who for whatever reason need a little bit of therapy input at the moment. So I work within a team that's called a multidisciplinary team. So we've got physios, OTs, speech therapists, neuropsychologists, which we're very fortunate to have, and a nurse. So we do a lot of triage of referrals, who needs to see which one of us, or maybe all of us, how long, sort of how high priority their needs are in terms of how quickly we need to respond and get to see them. And then I'm out and about in Manchester visiting people in their own homes and doing physio. And sometimes they come into us to our therapy gym as well.
Yes, both of which I've done.
You have, yeah.
It's a good therapy gym.
Yeah, we've got a lot of kit in there.
You do.
Which is, sometimes a little bit better than trying to kind of be a bit more creative in somebody's home, which we're pretty good at as community therapists. But yeah, sometimes getting in the gym, we can push people a little bit harder than maybe we can in their own home.
Yeah, definitely. I think, because when we first met, it was right after I'd come out of hospital.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling so good, bit low mood and everything. And the one thing I remember is my feet were so swollen. Right, because I'd been sat down or lying down for well beyond the hospital appointment. It was, before I'd gone in for it, I was just kind of sedentary.
Yeah.
And so my feet had swollen so much, and it was you that got across to me. It's like, well, if you want that to stop, you need to move around.
You need to get moving. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's, I think if I think back to when we first met, I think, your diagnosis was so new. You were just reeling in every direction from that. And to kind of come in and support people at that point, some people aren't ready at that point to have therapy input. They just need some time to deal with that diagnosis, which is, understandable in every way, but everybody deals with it differently. Some people are like, right, I am not going to let this get me down. What can I do? What can you get me doing? And some people are like, no, just leave me alone for a couple of months, just give me some time to kind of get my thoughts in order. So, but I think giving people that confidence to maybe not be scared of movement and that it might be a good thing at the beginning was, I think that's where we were with yourself.
Yes.
I mean, I think if the journey that you went on sort of with our team, I think we were seeing you on and off about a year possibly.
I think so, yeah.
In kind of various forms. And I think when we first met, you were basically just transferring through about 90 degrees from bed to a chair, and that was kind of the extent of your mobility at that point. And by the time we finished our input, you were attending our exercise class, doing a circuits class with us, and we're a little bit like the guides. We come in and we're like, right, these are the things that you can't do right now, but we think if you do this and you work really hard on this, you can achieve this, and then you can achieve this, and then you can achieve this. And we did. And kind of this is where we are now. So, but having that motivation to keep doing it in between, that's the hard bit, isn't it, actually, for our patients, is kind of like, oh, I'm tired. I'm not feeling it today. My legs hurt. I've got pain. But knowing that once you've done it, you get that sense of satisfaction, that benefit afterwards, and then to achieve those goals. That's what makes it worth it, doesn't it?
It does. It very much does.
I should have said at some point in there that how proud I was of how far you've come since we first met as well, to be honest, Ashleigh. But I didn't know if you wanted me to go there.
Yeah, oh, definitely, I think. So I guess I get on that slightly. What's something a little bit unexpected that you've learned in your years as a physio?
Oh, just, I think, people's resilience in the face of adversity is just phenomenal. People thank us for our input with them and how we've helped them, but actually, working with some people, they are just incredibly inspiring. The way they deal with their diagnosis, what that means to them for their future, that has completely changed. In one consultant appointment, it's gone from not knowing something to I have a life-changing condition. And, the way people approach that is just phenomenal. It's quite humbling sometimes to be able to sort of go in and support them, because actually they're teaching us stuff as well.
So you might be a little biased when I ask this question, but how important do you think it is for people to stay active when they have MS?
Unbelievably important. At the end of the day, MS is a condition that changes over time. And yes, treatment has moved on incredibly, certainly since I've qualified, where there was very little that people could do for MS to where we are now. But staying active, maintaining the activity and the strength that you have is so important in terms of being able to deal with what's next. And we don't know what's next for everybody. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to be. But we know that as physios, as therapists, if we can get people in as good a shape as possible at this point, they're in a pretty good place to deal with it when it does happen.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like, going back to your earlier point about, some people just kind of aren't ready, and some people need some time to cope with it. And some people kind of need to be just given that little push, I think. And that's where I was at.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Needed some gentle encouragement / cajoling to do it, I think.
Because it's scary.
It is scary.
It's really scary.
Because I'd gotten to a point where I had this previously mysterious illness rather, that had literally crippled me, and I was too scared to do anything. I was kind of too scared to get out of the chair too much, and I was doing my best, but I still hadn't had the frame around the, in the bathroom that I used to sort of move around in there, and the seat that I use in the shower. I didn't have those things as soon as I got out of the hospital. But through yourself and the offices that you're connected to, where you can provide those things, just the equipment, Zimmer frame, etc. So getting all of that stuff is like, wow, okay, I can do this. There is ways that I can adapt. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. And we've touched on this in a couple of the other interviews in this series, that it feels like it can be something that will crush the life out of you. So I think, we've touched on this already, and you may sound like a broken record again, but is physio appropriate for everyone with MS? Like, is there always an improvement that can be made, do you think?
I would say yes, with a caveat of, can we make everybody walk again if they've lost a lot of strength in their limbs? Possibly not. But can we improve their quality of life in some way? Then I would say yes. And it's about that kind of the therapeutic relationship, working out what it is that the person we're working with wants to achieve. What is it that they feel they want to be able to do? Can we help them achieve that goal? And if we can't help them achieve it in the way they want to, like walking to the shop, but can we enable them to go to the shop independently in some other way? So whilst we will try our best, absolute best, to get people as good as they physically can, no, we don't always meet their expectations, because, sometimes it's just not possible. But again, that creativity, helping people to reach that goal in an alternative way so that they can still live what we would call a valued life and continue to live a valued life despite the MS.
So where should someone start if they don't currently have any kind of physio but feel like they might be able to benefit? Where's the starting point, do you think?
Well, hopefully everybody has got a GP. So often the GPs are kind of the gatekeepers to services like ourselves. So your GP is a really good place to start. Or if you have an MS nurse, they should also be very clued up on what is and isn't available in your area. So, I can only speak for what we have here in Greater Manchester, but, most areas around here have a community neuro team. Some different areas have more of an outpatient service where they don't necessarily have home visits, but you have to go to the hospital. It really varies from place to place, but your GP, MS nurse, or your consultant, if you're in their kind of realm at that point, they should be able to help as well.
Fantastic. Like, again, it can feel like you're adrift by yourself, but you're not, right? These people exist to help. That's the purpose, right? That's why they're there.
Absolutely. And it's being sort of brave enough to say, okay, I need some help at this point. Things have got to the point where I'm not coping. I'm not able to do what I want to be able to do. I need some help. And then asking the right people to get those referrals to teams like us.
So I remember, I had the walking frame as soon as I got out of hospital. They sent me home with that and some crutches. So I had a lot of stuff to carry.
to a very high level flat, I think, at that point.
Yeah. At the time, I lived on the 9th floor in a building where there was one lift, which broke for 2 months once. I was stuck in my flat on my birthday.
But, it's, you just, once you kind of got your head around it and we got going, the progress we made, and actually was quite a short period of time, was phenomenal. I think when we first met, you were staying in bed quite a lot, sitting down, maybe in the chair a little bit more than we would have liked. And we changed that quite quickly, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think what you've impressed on me several times is that it's not about doing the physio exercises. It's not about doing that when the physio visits. It's about sticking to it the rest of the time as well.
Yeah.
And that was like, so I have partners to just kind of cajole me along, like, you need to do your physio. I don't wanna. But then it got to a point where it's like, no, I want to do my physio because I can see it's having an appreciable effect, right? I can see what's happening, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And I think when you can feel that it's helping you,
Yes.
the motivation is there. And I think sometimes, what we're doing with some of the exercises is about maintaining. So you're not always going to get these kind of big leaps forwards, but you're maintaining what you've got. And even that is so important. So, we really stress to people that doing exercise, doing some sort of physical activity every day should be part of your routine. It's not, I'm doing it now because I've had a bit of a flare up and things aren't great, so I'm just going to work now, and then in 2 months when I feel better, just going to forget about it.
Yeah.
It has to be kind of really regular, part of your daily routine, part of your self-care. And it does improve your mood because you're doing something for yourself. You're taking control back from MS. You're kind of doing something for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be like, I've got like a routine that I do, but some days it's like, well, actually my back's really painful, so I won't do this, thing where I lift my back up off the, there might be a couple of times where I think, well, maybe I'll do, a few fewer because my legs are particularly painful, whatever. You don't have to push yourself every single time. Sometimes you are just doing it just to keep hold of what you've got.
Absolutely. And somebody might come in and go, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't do my exercise over the weekend, I was really busy. I'm like, no, that's fine, because you were busy living your life, and that's brilliant too, and that's kind of what we want. But it's like, I know that I'm going to go back to it when I've got the energy, when I've recovered from that weekend. Maybe you've got a little bit of fatigue creeping in because you've been so busy, but you've been busy doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's really important too, isn't it?
Yeah, well, so that chimes exactly with when I was at Transpride Brighton last year. We didn't go this year because we'd moved house and it was an expensive time. So I was like, oh, let's stay here. But last year was when I had the gig. I was up 2 flights of stairs. And so we did that, and I had to go up and I had to go down, and I had to do that a couple of times over the course of the day. And then when we got back into the flat that we were staying in, I was like, oh God, now I've got to do my physio. And the other two were like, no, I don't think you do. I think, your physio has been you studying. That then was the exam.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, yeah.
The whole point of physio was to enable you to do that.
Exactly. So you don't have to kick yourself if you're not doing it absolutely every single day.
Makes all those step-ups I had you doing in your flat worth it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, God. Damn step-ups. So obviously any advice that you give here will necessarily only have to be quite general, but do you have any tips for people who are listening to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think staying as active as you possibly can within the realms of your kind of physical disability at that point. So be that going out for a walk every day, if you're able to do that, be that doing some bed exercises every day, but maintaining that level of activity, being active, doing something for yourself every day, sitting in really nice positions where you're kind of nice and in alignment so that you don't end up with aches and pains, which then impact on your ability the following day. That's also really important. But I think being active within your capabilities is just so important.
Do you have any tips for people with MS about staying positive and thinking about the future?
It's a really hard one, isn't it? Like we alluded to earlier, everybody deals with these things in their own way. Some people want to bury their head in the sand and just crack on with it, and some people need a little bit of extra support. I would say, I think, if you're struggling from a kind of positivity perspective, maybe seeking some help from some counselling, or if you're lucky enough to have some psychology within your area, again, your GP or your MS nurse might be the gatekeeper to get you some support from that perspective. But I think being as active and thinking about what's important to you, what makes you, what your values are, what your beliefs are, and kind of living to them as much as possible despite your MS. Don't let it define who you are. You're still you. You're just you with MS.
And if anything, you're just you, and kind of braver and more hardcore, because, hey, you're not letting MS get you down. Absolutely. Not letting it stop me.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's some people listening to this thinking, oh my goodness, how can I do that? How can she just say, you've got to live with it? You know, it's not that. I'm not being flippant about how huge a diagnosis of primary progressive MS is at all. I think our job is to really motivate and to enable, and we just want people to live their life to the full whilst they can, and if we can help them in any way, then that's what we're here for.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic note to end it on. Thank you very much, Helen.
It's my pleasure.
I really enjoyed getting to chat to Helen again. I miss our sessions. But it's been a good reminder for me to try and, get back to a gym and generally think about ways to manage my health as best I can. I hope you enjoyed this episode too. And, as promised, here's some ideas of how you can find out more about physio and exercise. You can find links to them in the episode description. For an introduction, check out mssociety.org.uk/physiotherapy. This page has info about physiotherapy, how you might access it, and you can find much more about exercise at MS, including links to some great videos at mssociety.org.uk/staying-active. And I've recently found out that the MS Society run a Move More with MS service. This helps people to get more active with their MS through specific exercise or moving around more. It's run by physical activity specialists, and you can speak to them by calling the MS helpline on 0808 800 8000 or visit mssociety.uk/helpline for more ways to get in touch. Thanks so much for listening today. And if you'd like to hear more from me, Ashleigh, on living with progressive MS, you can find our other episodes on the MS Society's website or from wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also find more stories and information about living with progressive MS at mssociety.org.uk. Thanks for listening and indeed for watching.